This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. Good morning, I'm John Trout. It's Friday, July 5th, 2024. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
President Biden prepares for what could be the biggest week of his presidency as calls continue for him to step out of the race. I'm John Stolnis in Washington.
President Biden has a call with the Prime Minister of Israel on the 4th of July. I'm Clayton Neville.
A Chicago man becomes the new champ for stuffing down hot dogs at Coney Island. I'm Jackie Quinn.
On Wall Street, investors are back at it this morning after yesterday's 4th of July holiday and markets were closed. Today is a Jobs Friday. I'm Jessica Ettinger.
The parent company of Saks Fifth Avenue plans to buy rival Neiman Marcus. I'm Shirley Adler.
An American swimmer took a dip in the murky Seine River in Paris on the 4th of July. I'm Ed Donahue.
All ahead on America in the Morning. President Biden continues to hear calls for him to step aside following that debate, and this coming week could be among the most pivotal of his Oval Office tenure. John Stolnis has more from Washington.
The crowd gathered on the South Lawn of the White House last night shouting 4 more years as the president, First Lady Jill Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff made brief remarks ahead of a fireworks display.
Folks, it's all about democracy. It's all about freedom. It's all about who we are. We're the United States of America, and nothing like it exists in the world.
The president told the crowd he wasn't going anywhere, but the Associated Press reports some large donors are either holding off or canceling fundraisers for the president. The New York Times reports the president told Democratic governors on a Wednesday night call that he needs to get more sleep, work fewer hours, and cease doing events that start after 8 p.m. Hawaii Governor Josh Green reportedly asked President Biden about his health, to which Biden said his health was fine, but added, quote, "It's just my brain." However, some Democrats in the room, like California's Gavin Newsom, says Biden was smiling and joking with that last line, and he forcefully defended the president at a rally in Michigan.
Politics is not just performative, it's not just entertainment. It's about getting things done. And it's been a remarkable 3.5 years from my perspective. It's been, dare I say, a masterclass.
The White House has increased Biden's public schedule in recent days. He heads to Wisconsin later today for a rally and will sit down for a rare, extensive interview with ABC's George Stephanopoulos. On Sunday, he'll be in Philadelphia, and then he'll host a NATO summit in Washington next week, where he's expected to hold a news conference at some point. Yesterday, he conducted local radio interviews like this one with WURD's Andrea Lawful Sanders, who asked the president if there was any reason for the American people to be concerned about him.
I had a bad debate.
Yeah.
I had a bad debate. But 90 minutes on stage does not erase what I've done for 3.5 years.
St. Anselm College political analyst Chris Galdieri says if Biden wants to assure Americans he should stay in the race, he needs to do more in public.
None of these radio call-ins or anything is going to get anywhere near the wall-to-wall coverage that the debate.
How the president conducts himself over this next week could be the deciding factor on whether he'll be able to silence the calls for him to step aside. John Stolnis, Washington.
At least 4 people across the country have been killed in July 4th shootings. Correspondent Lisa Dwyer reports.
2 women in a home in Chicago, a police officer serving a warrant in Cleveland, and an armed person making threats in Yellowstone National Park are among people who have been killed in shootings this year on the 4th of July. The holiday is historically one of the nation's deadliest days of the year. Violence and mass shootings often increase in the summer months, with more people gathering for social events, teens out of school, and hotter temperatures. 3 boys ages 8, 7, and 5 were also wounded in the shooting in Chicago, which police say resulted from a potential personal dispute. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
The Israeli Prime Minister spoke with President Biden on America's Independence Day. Correspondent Clayton Neville has details.
Israeli officials say that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu congratulated President Biden in recognition of the 4th of July. Vice President Kamala Harris was reportedly on the call, too. The leaders are said to have talked about efforts to finalize a potential ceasefire deal that would come with the release of hostages by Hamas in the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. Reports indicate there's a pretty significant opening for a potential deal. According to the White House, Biden and Netanyahu agreed that the U.S. and Israeli national security teams will meet to talk on July 15th. I'm Clayton Neville.
When we return on America in the Morning, a new competitive eating champion after these messages. America in the Morning, weather. At the national map, here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist La Troy Thornton.
The risk for severe weather covers a rather large area today, stretching from New England to southern lower Michigan and southward to areas from Kentucky and northern Tennessee through northern Virginia and much of Pennsylvania. Within this zone, thunderstorms will be capable of producing downpours that cause flash flooding, plus some hail, damaging wind gusts, and possibly some tornadoes. As the cold front that serves as the focus for this activity shifts toward the eastern seaboard into Saturday, the severe threat in the form of strong wind and a flooding risk moves more toward the coast from southern New England into the southeast, followed by a bit of a reprieve from the recent humidity to end the weekend. Otherwise, thunderstorms are expected from the upper Midwest through the northern tier into eastern Montana in association with a storm sliding into the plains as the day progresses, but a drier zone is expected for the central plains, as much of Nebraska and Kansas should stay dry between that storm and a separate disturbance diving toward the southern plains. This feature will bring thunderstorms, most numerous near and along the Red River bordering Texas and Oklahoma, but additional storms will once again dot the majority of the southeastern states. Impacts from Hurricane Beryl may start to be felt as soon as today along the Gulf Coast as Beryl churns near Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, and through the weekend, the Gulf Coast faces an increased rip current risk spreading from southern Texas through the Florida Keys. Beryl is currently forecast to reach the border zone of South Texas and Mexico as a hurricane Sunday night, with rain and wind lasting into next week. The West sits underneath an intense heat wave through the weekend, with no reprieve in store as some all-time record highs are expected to be approached away from the coast. For Green Bay, Wisconsin, cooler conditions with periods of rain and a thunderstorm are in store with a high of just 70. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist La Troy Thornton.
You can follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. According to Butte County Public Information Officer Christy Olio, the vast majority of the 17,000 people who had to evacuate their Northern California homes because of the Thompson Fire are now able to return. The Thompson Fire broke out before noon Tuesday, about 70 miles north of Sacramento, sending a huge plume of smoke that could be seen from space. So far, the fire has burned at least 3,700 acres and is currently only 29% contained. Officials are concerned about soaring daytime temperatures well over 100 degrees. Firefighters have been injured. The cause of that blaze is still under investigation. A new hot dog eating champion has been crowned at Coney Island. Correspondent Jackie Quinn reports.
3, 2, 1, go!
The countdown on ESPN for the annual Nathan's Famous 4th of July hot dog eating contest on Coney Island. And the winner?
I was able to unlock something that I don't know where it came from.
39-year-old Patrick Bertoletti of Chicago. He wolfed down the winning 58 hot dogs during the 10-minute contest. Bertoletti says knowing the perennial winner Joey Chestnut wasn't competing this year provided new motivation.
I lost some weight, just lots of work, and there was an urgency. With Joey not here, I knew I had a shot.
Women's defending champ Mickey Sudo of Florida chowing down 51 hot dogs, clinching the title and the $10,000 prize. I'm Jackie Quinn.
Among the stories we're covering next, the summer of travel and new car discounts this weekend. America in the Morning, back after these messages. You're with America in the Morning. The Business Report is sponsored by Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments is a fiduciary, always putting clients' interests first. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Here's CNBC's Jessica Ettinger.
Wall Street back at it this morning after the 4th of July market holiday yesterday. The S&P 500 index, which is up 16% year to date. It opens at a fresh record high this morning, and so does the NASDAQ. Today's all about jobs, though. The big jobs report out at 8:30 Eastern time this morning. One forecast is for not much to have changed.
UKG, which is a software human resource company, they say we see the labor market cool as the summer heated up with workforce activity completely flat in June. No particular points of weakness, but also no particular points of strength.
CNBC's Steve Leisman. The forecast is for the unemployment rate to hold steady near a 50-year low of 4%. Gas prices right about where they were for the fourth holiday last year. Oil prices ticked up higher earlier this week as Hurricane Beryl in the Caribbean became a Category 5, the earliest major hurricane in the Atlantic in recorded history. This, along with a forecast of busier than normal hurricane season, had oil traders bidding up contracts. Now, what about inflation at the pump? Well, there isn't any. 10 years ago, in July of 2014, you were paying more for a gallon of regular. It was $3.68 then, according to the Energy Information Administration. A lot of Americans on the roads and at the airports today. It turns out the summer of 24 is yet another summer of travel for Americans. People are even going to the desert.
It's going to be very crowded. It will be a record for the U.S. and even in Europe, where you have a lot of outbound Americans going to Europe. In the U.S., we're seeing a lot of beach traffic happening. And of course, Vegas, always popular.
Booking.com CEO Glenn Fogel on CNBC. His company is the parent of travel sites like Priceline.com, Kayak, Cheap Flights, and more.
Car dealers are attempting to capitalize on what little money many of us have at the end of the month. What are some of the incentives?
You know, dealers are slowly getting their computer systems back after the CDK hack of their software. If you went car shopping yesterday on the holiday or you're planning to this weekend, you're seeing a lot more cars on dealer lots and actual discounts. But there's a balance to that.
If you look at inventory levels, they're up about 50% versus last year, 3 million units. That's about normal for this time of year. So if you see consumers, not really kind of stepping up, the automaker is going to face a very important decision. They're either going to have to layer in more discounts to move those units and keep their plants running, or they're going to have to take the difficult decision of maybe reducing production, taking some shifts off, et cetera, which has much bigger impact on the automakers and the economy.
Former Ford CEO Mark Fields on CNBC. On today's watch list, it's all about jobs. The June employment report out at 8:30 Eastern this morning from the Labor Department.
There's CNBC's Jessica Ettinger. The company behind Saks Fifth Avenue has announced it plans to buy another high-end shopping giant. Correspondent Shelley Adler reports.
The deal is worth $2.65 billion. The new organization would be called Saks Global. It will be made up of Saks Fifth Avenue and Saks Off Fifth brands, Neiman Marcus and Bergdorf Goodman, as well as the real estate assets of Neiman Marcus Group and HBC, which is a holding company that purchased Saks in 2013. Both Saks and Neiman Marcus have struggled as shoppers have been pulling back on buying high-end goods and shifting their spending toward experiences like travel and upscale restaurants. I'm Shelley Adler.
When we return on America in the Morning, termites, the original colonists. After these messages. America in the Morning rolls on. An American in Paris and a risky dip into the Seine River ahead of the Summer Olympics. Correspondent Ed Donahue reports.
Anybody want to come in?
As the city prepares for the Summer Olympics, 75-year-old Joel Strati McClure decided to check out the river running through the heart of Paris.
I'm very impressed with everything the French have done to try to clean up this river, which is filthy, and want to celebrate it.
The French government has been trying to clean up the Seine. Marathon swimming and triathlon are scheduled to take place there. After a brief swim, McClure declared,
"Water's fantastic. It's just the right temperature. I am going to start swimming in the Seine every day."
McClure says he drank some of the water. If there's something in it, he may die.
Other swimmers who are coming for the Olympics will know that if I don't die, that it's safe to swim in.
Good news for him. New tests show water quality in the Seine improved over the past week. I'm Ed Donahue.
Scientists have made a surprising discovery about termite mounds in South Africa. Correspondent Donna Warder has the story.
Researchers at Stellenbosch University say the radiocarbon dating, they found some of the mounds to be 34,000 years old, and they're still inhabited. They're near the Buffels River in Namaqualand. Senior lecturer Michelle Francis says the mounds existed while saber-toothed cats and woolly mammoths roamed other parts of the earth, and the mounds are a termite version of an apartment complex, having been consistently inhabited by termite colonies. Francis says the southern harvester termites are experts at capturing and storing carbon by collecting twigs and other dead wood and putting it back deep into the soil, and that has benefits in offsetting climate change by reducing the amount of carbon emitted into the atmosphere. I'm Donna Warder.
America in the Morning for Friday, July 5th, 2024 is produced by Alexander Hinton. Our senior producer is Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour.
Beryl leaves more destruction in its path as it moves toward the Yucatan Peninsula. I'm Clayton Neville.
The Biden campaign is trying to quiet concerns after the president's debate performance against Donald Trump last week. Jennifer King, Washington.
Some evacuation orders are lifted as fire crews begin to get an upper hand on a wildfire in Northern California.
A couple of the neighbors lost their house.
I'm Jim Roop in Los Angeles.
A Russian-born U.S. citizen received a 12-and-a-half-year prison sentence for drug trafficking. I'm Jackie Quinn.
It's time for another family film to topple the box office. I'm Kevin Carr.
Back after these messages. Monitoring the chance for severe weather today for America in the Morning. Here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist La Troy Thornton.
The risk for severe weather covers a rather large area today, stretching from New England to southern lower Michigan and southward to areas from Kentucky and northern Tennessee through northern Virginia and much of Pennsylvania. Within this zone, thunderstorms will be capable of producing downpours that cause flash flooding, plus some hail, damaging wind gusts, and possibly some tornadoes. As the cold front that serves as the focus for this activity shifts toward the eastern seaboard into Saturday, the severe threat in the form of strong wind and a flooding risk moves more toward the coast from southern New England into the southeast, followed by a bit of a reprieve from the recent humidity to end the weekend. Thunderstorms are expected from the upper Midwest through the northern tier into eastern Montana in association with a storm sliding into the plains as the day progresses, but a drier zone is expected for the central plains, as much of Nebraska and Kansas should stay dry between that storm and a separate disturbance diving toward the southern plains. This feature will bring thunderstorms, most numerous near and along the Red River bordering Texas and Oklahoma, but additional storms will once again dot the majority of the southeastern states. Speaking of the southeast, impacts from Hurricane Beryl may start to be felt as soon as today along the Gulf Coast as Beryl churns near Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, and through the weekend the Gulf Coast faces an increased rip current risk spreading from southern Texas through the Florida Keys. Beryl is currently forecast to reach the border zone of South Texas and Mexico as a hurricane Sunday night, with rain and wind lasting into next week. The West sits underneath an intense heat wave through the weekend, with no reprieve in store as some all-time record highs are expected to be approached away from the coast. For Green Bay, Wisconsin, cooler conditions with periods of rain and a thunderstorm are in store with a high of just 70. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist La Troy Thornton.
Remember, follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. Hurricane Beryl is churning toward the Yucatan Peninsula as a Category 2 storm after pummeling parts of Jamaica. Correspondent Clayton Neville has the latest on the storm.
Beryl was the first major hurricane to pass this close to Jamaica in more than 15 years. The storm center passed 45 miles south of Kingston, Jamaica, as a Category 4 hurricane with winds as high as 140 miles per hour. Roofs ripped off homes and buildings. Trees snapped. Widespread destruction. Beryl passed south of the Cayman Islands yesterday morning with heavy wind and strong storm surge. It's forecast to continue its weakening trend, but still expected to pack quite the punch as it heads towards Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. In an AP interview, Miriam Cetra, a tourist from Dallas who was visiting Mexico, says she decided to stay there instead of trying to fly back early to beat the hurricane.
I figured I'd rather be stuck in Mexico for an extra day than go back 2 days early to the United States. So went out and bought a bunch of groceries, figured we'd get the last of the sun in today too. And then it's just going to be hunker down and just stay indoors until hopefully it passes.
Hurricane specialist Jack Bevan at the National Hurricane Center told the AP that even though the storm stayed well south of the U.S. mainland, it could impact the Gulf Coast in the coming days.
We expect it to emerge over the Gulf of Mexico as a tropical storm and re-intensify and turn northwestward on a course towards northeastern Mexico and possibly portions of the Texas coast. We're talking 4 to 5 days before the storm would get there.
Officials in Texas and along the U.S. Gulf Coast now paying close attention to Beryl as it slowly weakens, but heads their direction. I'm Clayton Neville.
President Biden is urging voters to stay with him as his campaign tries to push back after his debate performance. Correspondent Jennifer King has more on the story.
Ahead of a trip to Madison, Wisconsin, Biden did an interview with Earl Ingram for his show on Civic Media Radio Network.
The stakes are really high. I know you know this. For democracy, for freedom, our economics, our economy are all on the line. And the other side is working overtime to chip away at your right to vote to begin with.
His interview, taped Wednesday, was part of a media and public events blitz that he and his staff have acknowledged as a make-or-break moment.
I had a bad night. And the fact of the matter is that, I screwed up. I made a mistake. But I learned from my father, when you get knocked down, just get back up.
The venue was moderately friendly, but political analyst Chris Galdieri with St. Anselm College says President Biden really needs to be seen and heard in public.
Public events where he can make the case that was a bad night, not the new normal.
Jennifer King, Washington.
A wildfire in Northern California keeps firefighters busy and residents hopeful as crews gain some ground on the fast-moving blaze. Following that story, America in the Morning's West Coast correspondent Jim Roop.
Some evacuation orders are downgraded from mandatory to voluntary Thursday, giving some residents a chance to check on their property. Relieved, but still uncertain.
It's awful. It's gut-wrenching. You don't know what to expect.
It's been very helpful to be able to come over here and just pop and grab a couple of things and just see how our neighbors are doing. We did hear a couple of neighbors lost their house.
The so-called Thompson Fire in Northern California's Butte County near Oroville, about 70 miles north of Sacramento, has been burning since Tuesday. It has scorched nearly 3,600 acres. And remember, an acre is about the size of a football field. So imagine 3,600 football fields burning. It's destroyed 4 homes, injured 8 firefighters, just 7% contained, which means, of course, 93% of that fire still burning out of control in extremely hot temperatures, rough terrain, and as Rick Carhart with the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, known as CAL FIRE, says, just overall nasty conditions.
That extreme, fires are starting that easily, and if one spark hits the ground, it's just so easy for it to spread, and that's why we're really just trying to get the message out to everybody to be so careful with what you're doing.
He says there is a real threat to infrastructure, specifically Oroville's water and power supplies. The town declared a local state of emergency, and Governor Newsom also declared a state of emergency in an effort to get state and some federal funding for the firefighting effort and eventual recovery. The fight continues, as does the extreme heat all across California and the West. Jim Roop, Los Angeles.
The Supreme Court's ruling on presidential immunity weighs on President Trump's legal woes. Correspondent Jennifer Walker reports.
The judge in Donald Trump's hush money trial now considering what, if any, impact that Supreme Court decision Monday granting presidents broad immunity has on the case and moving his sentencing to September instead of next week. Boston College law professor Jeffrey Cohen.
My analysis of this was that so long as the official acts of the president were in public and publicly done, which most of them were, then the evidence was properly admitted, even by the Supreme Court standard, and then this conviction should stand.
Trump's lawyers say some evidence should not have been put before the jury and the conviction should not stand. Julie Walker, New York.
When we return on America in the Morning, top Hezbollah leader killed, and in our tech report, the human eye reimagined. Those stories and more, we're back after these messages. I'm John Trout. This is America in the Morning. An armed person who was making unspecified threats at Yellowstone National Park died, and a park ranger was hospitalized following an exchange of gunfire. The shooting happened at Canyon Village, an area in the central part of the park that has a campground, lodging, and visitor center. A statement from park officials does not say exactly where the shots were fired or whether visitors were impacted by what it calls a significant law enforcement incident. The statement from officials added that the ranger who was injured is in stable condition at a hospital, but did not specify how the ranger was hurt. The name of the person who died has yet to be released. Hezbollah is ramping up its attacks on Israel after one of its senior commanders was killed in an Israeli strike. Correspondent Nayarn Kim reports.
The Lebanon-based Hezbollah group says it's launched over 200 rockets at several military bases in Israel in retaliation for a strike that killed one of its senior commanders. After this latest attack, Israeli defense forces struck several towns in southern Lebanon, where local news outlets say at least one person is dead. In the Lebanese town of Sheba, civil defense workers tried to extinguish fires from the Israeli bombardment. The Hezbollah strike is one of the largest attacks during the months-long conflict along the Lebanon-Israel border. I'm Nayan Kim.
According to inside sources, former Brazilian president Jair Bolsonaro is being indicted by police for alleged money laundering and criminal association. The second charge is in connection with undeclared diamonds the leader received from Saudi Arabia during his time in office. In March, Bolsonaro was indicted for falsifying his COVID vaccine records and those of his family members. A U.S. citizen in Russia receives a lengthy prison sentence. Correspondent Jackie Quinn has details.
A lawyer representing Robert Woodland in Moscow says Woodland has been sentenced to more than a dozen years in prison for attempting to traffic large amounts of illegal drugs. The lawyer says Woodland has mental health issues and that an appeal of the prison sentence is planned. The State Department says it is aware of the case. According to Russian media, Woodland's information matches that of a man now 33 years old who told an interviewer he had gone to Russia to find his birth mother because he had been adopted by an American couple in the mid-1990s. I'm Jackie Quinn.
Scientists have created a new camera lens that closely resembles how the human eye processes information, which could go a long way to help self-driving cars and robots navigate more easily. More on that in today's Tech Report. Here's Chuck Palm.
Scientists have found a way to make a camera work more like a human eye. And this could be good news for smartphones and self-driving car cameras. A team of scientists from University of Maryland have invented a camera mechanism that improves how robots see and react to the world around them. This camera mimics tiny involuntary movements that the human eye makes, called the Artificial Microcascade Enhanced Event Camera. The lead researcher on the paper, Botato Hay, said that event cameras are relatively new technology that are better at tracking moving objects than traditional cameras, but the event camera struggles to capture sharp, blur-free images when there's a lot of motion involved. The technology works by inserting a rotating prism inside the camera to redirect light beams captured by the lens, allowing the camera to stabilize the textures of a recorded object just as the human eye would. Leave a comment at allthetoptech.tech. I'm Chuck Palm.
Plenty of baseball on Independence Day with the Friday Sports Report. Here's America in the Morning's Robert Workman.
A full slate of baseball on the 4th of July because somebody up there likes us, and mostly in the sunshine. The day opened in Washington, D.C., appropriately enough, where Jake Irvin put his John Hancock on a one-hitter, leading the Nationals over the Mets 1-0.
It means a heck of a lot more on 4th of July, I can tell you that. It's a cool accomplishment. It was a fun day, and Riley and I were on the same page all day. Big props to him. He called a fantastic game.
Jesse Winker's pinch hit dinger in the 8th was the difference. The Cubs rang the Phillies bell 10-2. Ian Happ with 3-run fireworks from both sides of the plate. At the Battle of Pelham in the Bronx, the Reds swept out the Yankees 8-4. 3 home runs driving General Washington across the river. Luckily, he has his own bridge there now. The Red Sox, kept coming after the Marlins until they won 6-5 in 12 innings. The Red Birds, or Cardinals, captured Fort Duquesne, edging the Pirates 3-2 in 10. The Astros took the battle across the border, beating the Blue Jays 5-3 in York, or Toronto, as they like to call it now. On the Western Frontier, the Guardians whipped the White Sox 8-4. Stephen Kwan homered among his 3 hits. He now leads the majors with a .367 average. Twins trampled the Tigers 12-3. The game shortened to 7 innings by rain. Padres got by the Rangers 3-1. All-star Jurickson Profar earned his stripes with a home run, 2 runs scored, and throwing a runner out of the plate. Back-to-back shutouts for the A's. They blanked the Angels again 5-0 behind J.P. Sears and the Cavaliers. A 4-hit effort for manager Mark Kotze.
I thought J.P. did a nice job today. Pitch count got up, but overall, he managed the lineup, did a good job mixing pitches when he needed to, got out of a jam.
A naval battle in Seattle as the Mariners bottled up the Orioles 7-3. 3 RBI for John Paul Jones. J.P. Crawford. The J.P. really does stand for John Paul for him, though. Under the lights, the Rays defeated the Royals 10-8, in keeping with the theme. Rockies edged the Brewers 4-3. Giants topped the Braves 4-2. And the Diamondbacks dashed past the Dodgers 9-3. Christian Walker enjoying life, liberty, and the pursuit of homers against L.A. He hit 2 more. He's got 9 off Dodger pitching this year, and now 19 in 42 career games at Dodger Stadium. At Wimbledon's second round, top seed Iga Swiatek advanced, but 5 seed Jessica Pegula is out, while fellow American seeds Danielle Collins and Madison Keys were winners. Men's number 2 Novak Djokovic made it to the third round, along with Americans Taylor Fritz and Ben Shelton. Soccer Euro 2024 quarterfinal action today. First, Spain takes on host nation Germany, followed by Portugal against France, one of the favorites going in. Tomorrow, another favorite, England meets Switzerland, then it'll be the Netherlands versus Turkey. At the Copa America, Argentina takes the first quarterfinal match, beating Ecuador on penalties in Houston. Tonight it'll be Venezuela versus Canada in Arlington, Texas. Saturday, Colombia takes on Panama in Glendale, Arizona, and Uruguay faces Brazil in Las Vegas. NBA, a sign and trade deal will send free agent Buddy Hield from the Sixers to the Warriors for a second-round draft pick. The guard gets a 2-year contract plus an option. That's Friday Sports.
America in the Morning for Friday, July 5th, 2024. Back after these messages. A New Mexico judge clears the way for the prosecution of Alex Baldwin next week in the fatal shooting case on the set of the film Rust. Correspondent Pamela Furr has more.
Jury selection in Baldwin's trial is scheduled to start next Tuesday in Santa Fe. This after Judge Mary Marlowe Sommer denied 2 motions filed by Baldwin's attorneys on Wednesday, alleging prosecutors had improperly handled evidence procedures in the case. Right now, he's charged with involuntary manslaughter after he was holding a prop weapon that contained real bullets on the film set in New Mexico back in 2021. The shot killed the cinematographer and injured the director as well. Baldwin has maintained his innocence since the shooting and claimed he didn't pull the trigger of the prop gun. If convicted, he could face up to 18 months in prison. Defense attorney Mark Sedlander tells the Associated Press.
This case is unusual in that usually if there is a workplace accident, even if it results in death, criminal charges are not filed. And the reason I am bringing this up is because that may be a consideration if Mr. Baldwin is convicted. It may be a consideration that the judge thinks of in deciding what an appropriate sentence might be.
There is a court-approved witness list of more than 60 people. Several first responders, investigators, firearm experts, and close-range witnesses to the shooting are also expected to speak. I'm Pamela Furr.
America in the Morning for Friday, July 5th, 2024 is produced by Alexander Hinton. Our senior producer is Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.